Thank you. Thank you, friendly. Incredible psychologist, pressure but no pressure. Geez, Lori. But I am home. Rise is my home, and I love the fact that I'm seeing some very familiar faces like Nicolene and Lori. Mandy, I think I've seen you before, haven't I? Yeah, I have. Yes, I have. I recognize your face. So I'm with familiar faces. So yeah, there's Grace with this familiar. Thanks, Tammy. That is you, isn't it? Yes, that must be Tammy, isn't it? Yes. Okay. Sorry, I missed your call. I had a hectic day today, Tammy, by the way. So we're talking about cognitive distortions. So this is something, Nicolene, you've definitely heard me speak about cognitive distortions. Hey, yeah. Mandy, have you? Okay. So Nicolene, you can tell Mandy what cognitive distortions are. You should have said no, girl.
Um, that's why I'm here for a recap.
What can you remember?
Sure. Well, that was a long time ago, hey? And I've just come
What?
through
Over
financial
2
year
years
end,
ago.
so my brain is a bit in
I'm
figures.
sorry.
Let me think. But you can carry on.
It was over 2 years ago, so I don't blame you. Okay, so this is a nice, I'm glad that you don't remember because then I'm not going to feel like I'm repeating myself and I'm not giving you anything new. So I'm happy you don't remember. So cognitive distortions are basically the negative thinking patterns that are not based on fact and they're not based on reality, right? And they're usually in nature very, very negatively biased. A lot of the times they are barely positive. Most of the time, 99.999% of the time, they're actually quite negative. And the negativity is always directed towards ourselves. Whenever we have a positive cognitive distortion, it's always about someone else. For example, oh my word, Sipe is such a great mom. She's like the best mom, for example. You never say that about yourself, but you always say it about someone else, right? A colleague, oh my word, she always has it under control, right? You never say that to yourself, but you will gladly and easily say it to someone else. So they are usually negatively biased, and we all experience them from time to time. We all experience them from time to time. I will tell you now that my number one cognitive distortion is catastrophizing. Tammy's number one cognitive distortion is minimizing. Yes, Laurie Burke, you and I, we are catastrophizers, you and I. We are, I know you and I, catastrophizers. Tammy is a minimizer. To Tammy, there can be a literal mountain in front of Tammy, and Tammy's like, oh no, friendy, that's easy. That's her favorite line. Oh no, friendy, that's easy. Meanwhile, man, it's not. Right? So we all, and look, I'm a clinical psychologist who is passionate about neuropsychology, which is all about the brain and studying the faculties of the brain and what part of the brain does what. And I still struggle with cognitive distortions from time to time. That's how common they are. The problem is, I mean, it's okay to experience them from time to time, but the problem is that if they're reinforced often enough, then they lead to things like depression or generalized anxiety disorder. And the maintained disorders such as PTSD and other anxiety disorders as well. Okay. Um, and they also lead to a lot of relational issues, whether it's within your private space or even at work. So why do we have cognitive distortions? Well, I can tell you now, a lot of the times it's an evolutionary thing for survival, right? It's protective. If I can predict the negative outcomes that is going to happen, then it sort of like softens the blow when I do get rejected, right? So if I go into the boardroom expecting my presentation to be absolutely torn into shreds, if I go there with that expectation, when it actually does happen that way, I'm not going to feel as bad, right? Because I've sort of buffered, I've created this bubble around me that's going to help, you know, the blows land softer, which is not true. Okay, so they help us cope with adverse life events. And but look, the more adverse life events we have, the more likely we are to have one or more cognitive distortions. Like I said, evolutionary survival thing. Um, and the one thing about cognitive distortions is that we need to remember that stress causes us to adapt our thinking in useful ways for survival in the immediate. So cognitive distortions serve a very survival instinct purpose, right? So they're very, very good for the immediate to protect us. Now, for example, if I'm walking down the road and I see a pit bull, right? I'm going to think, my word, this dog is going to tear me to pieces. I better walk, I better run the opposite direction, right? So it will save me in the meat. Or if I see a dog, a pit bull that's like showing its teeth, then I know, oh my word, it's gonna bite me. Meanwhile, the pit bull is trying to smile at me or something. I don't know, you know. Meanwhile, it's trying to smile at me, it's trying to greet, it's trying to say hello. But in my head, it's a pit bull, it's showing its teeth. I need to run, right? So it serves a survival purpose in the immediate, but it's often quite dysfunctional for, going forward. Okay. It's not good because remember, these thoughts are not rational and they're not healthy. Okay. Especially for the long term. Something else to remember, cognitive distortions in themselves are not a mental illness. Okay, so if you have if you struggle with cognitive distortions, it doesn't necessarily mean that we can diagnose you with something. Like I said, it's normal to struggle with cognitive distortions every now and then, right? So we can't just say, oh my word, you catastrophize, you definitely have a generalized anxiety disorder. It has to be catastrophizing and a list of other boxes you have to tick before we can say you have generalized anxiety disorder, or you have major depressive disorder, or you have post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. I need to stress that they do occur naturally, and that's okay. That is really, really okay. But if they occur regularly, then that might be a reason to talk to someone. Okay. So let's go through the list of cognitive distortions. I have my list over here. Hey, right. Now, let me start with the one that I've been harping on about all the time that Lori and I Lori, I don't know about you, but I'm the queen of catastrophizing. I literally am. I'm owning it. I'm working on it. I am working on it. I must say, I fight it every time it comes. So
Gotta say,
catastrophizing.
I'm a lot better than your last talk, than at your
Okay.
last talk. Because now I know that I'm catastrophizing.
And you know what, Lori, you might sometimes just knowing that this is, sorry, that's my 9-month-old shouting at me. So sometimes knowing that you catastrophize or knowing that, oh my word, this is mental filtering, oh my word, that's black and white thinking. Sometimes just knowing and having a name, being able to name what this thing that's going on in my head is enough to release you from it, right? I always tell people, man, knowledge is such a lot of power. So you'll be getting a lot of knowledge here so that you're able to identify some of your negative thinking patterns so that you can do something about it, or at least be aware. It all starts with awareness, and then you can take it further. Okay. So catastrophizing. That's when you magnify the problem and expect the worst. Okay. You expect so and so didn't say hello to me. Oh, she must be angry. Oh, she's going to fire me. Or my boss walked past me in the passage. She must be angry with me. I made a big mistake on that proposal that I submitted. She's gonna fire me. Catastrophizing. Meanwhile, the poor lady had her cataract removed yesterday, so she can't even see you. She's half blind walking past you. You're just like a little blur, right? It happens, isn't it? All the time. Okay. Um, so I'll name it and then I'll describe it and then I'll say what you can do to challenge it. Is that okay if I do it that way? Or do you want me to list all of them and then the challenges? First way. Okay, okay, all right. So how do we deal with catastrophizing? We have to go from what's the worst that could happen to what is most likely to happen. So if you have made a mistake or two in a proposal and you're thinking, my word, these people are going to fire me, right? That's catastrophizing. So you can go from what's the worst thing that could happen, which is fire me, but what is most likely to happen? Well, what's most likely to happen is that I'll get called in and the boss will highlight the mistakes I've made and tell me to go and fix it immediately and give it back to him or her before the end of the day. Do you see the difference? And I often have to talk myself through it that, girl, okay, let's just take it back a bit. What's the worst that I literally ask myself, okay, so what's the worst that can happen? And I actually write it down, what's the worst that can happen? And then I go to, well, what's most likely to happen? And then I write that down too. Okay. And what you find that most of the time, what actually happens is the second part. It's the what is most likely to happen, as opposed to the what's the worst that could happen. Okay. Laurie, do you have a trick or two that you can share with us that you use when you find yourself catastrophizing, if you're comfortable sharing?
I remember briefly, I think the last time I shared that I used to have these like thoughts while I was driving, and then I would stop and I would like scream and I'd be like, this is not you, like this is not the truth, like, and just remind myself that, like, make myself more aware of the fact that I wasn't going crazy. It wasn't like just me. So that's quite a useful thing I found to do. I know it's very random, but
No, it's not.
it's
It's not very random. It's actually very good. Like that is you stopping yourself in your tracks. Because I think what often happens is that we get this thought and we allow this thought to just, it becomes like a snowball going down, a mountain. And it just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger up until it's like this huge thing and it's causing an avalanche and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. But what you're doing with the screaming, you literally, number one, you're stopping your thoughts in their tracks. And what you're doing is you are, how can I put it? You are forcing your body on a physical level to stop. So you're not just saying, stop thinking like this, which never works, by the way, because if you say stop, what's your mind going to do? It's going to do exactly what you just told it not to do, which is silly. So never tell yourself to stop doing something. You got to find something else that will help you stop. So you are literally forcing your muscles, you're forcing your mind, you're forcing your body to just stop. So that's actually a very good way of stopping yourself, just literally stopping and screaming. It's very good. It's very good, Lori. Okay. Something else that ladies struggle with, comparison. Comparison. So that is when it is a cognitive distortion, guys. And I don't think there is a lady on this earth who doesn't every now and then struggle with comparison. Every now and then, just a little bit. So that's when you're comparing your whole life to someone's highlight reels, right? I always see Lori's highlight reels of when she's at the gym. And I always sit there and I'm like, yo. I'm like, yo, what am I even doing? I can't even do a single burpee and there she's doing 20. I'm like, yo, what am I doing with my life? I'm comparing my entire life or my entire gymming experience, and I'm comparing it to Lori's highlight reel. I forget that few years ago, months ago, Lori was where I am now, where she was struggling with that one burpee, right? So that's what we do. We literally think of it as yourself comparing yourself to someone's highlight reel on Instagram. because you only see a snippet of someone and you all of a sudden compare your entire mothering journey. You compare it to someone's like one little post that they posted, right? So how do we deal with comparison? Is this how things always are? Or is it just this one situation or this aspect of life? Is this how you always are? Or is this just this one situation, you know, or this little aspect of your life? Okay? And then we have something called magnification slash minimization. And then magnification is, like I said, it's very close to catastrophizing, where you're blowing up the negative whilst minimizing the positive. Okay. A lot of these cognitive distortions are quite similar in definition and they run into each other. So a lot of them aren't really just black and white, you know. So an example of that would be, it was just one good presentation, right? It was just one good presentation, right? So now what you do for that is you ask yourself, did I work hard on the presentation? Are there previous presentations that I've done that were actually good? So trying to find the evidence that shows that actually I've been doing well. It wasn't just this one presentation. There've been other things that I've been doing well. Okay. I'm running quickly because I know Zoom is going to cut us off. Hey, Lori. Zoom is going to cut us off, no? So,
I think at 6:40.
okay, yeah, I'm going to hurry it up because I know it's going to, okay. Discounting the positives, okay? You acknowledge the positives, but you reject them. So discounting the positive is not just ignoring the positives. It's actually, you see them, you acknowledge them, but then you reject them. For example, my boss only greeted me today because, you know, I was just there. I was the only one there. Or my boss only greeted me today because I was just lucky, or I don't know, something very silly like that. Okay. So there, what you would do is, am I ignoring or rejecting the positive here? Or something like, I only passed them, something I when dealing a lot with you know, I see a lot of teens, and they'd say something, oh, I only passed that math test because my friend helped me. They recognize that they passed the math test, but then they reject it. They're like, oh no, it was only because so-and-so helped me. It wasn't anything I didn't do well on my own accord. I did well, but it wasn't on me. It was because of someone else. Okay. Labeling. So you attach a negative label to yourself and to others, and you make things about character as opposed to behavior, right? So you say things like, I'm a useless employee, right? That's you calling your character useless instead of recognizing that I've been tardy this week and that's not great behavior. I don't like being tardy. That's not great behavior. But because you've been tardy this week, you make it about me. Oh, I'm a useless employee. I'm a lazy employee. Or my boss is a horrible person, instead of understanding that, my boss is just not a great leader. It's a behavioral thing. It's not the person, right? So how do you challenge that? Is this true for me always? Or is this true for my boss always? Or is this one aspect of my life? Or is this one aspect of my boss's life? Okay. Another one that we often have is overgeneralization. This is a nice one. Overgeneralization. That's when you make sweeping statements, right? With always or never or nothing based on like a specific incident. Okay. And with overgeneralization, we see a lot of it in disorders such as PTSD and anxiety. Okay. If someone perhaps was bitten by a dog, and to that person, all dogs are dangerous, right? Or if they were, I don't know, if something traumatic happened to that person, and then all of a sudden it's all certain things, or if you drive at night, this is what's going to happen. Or if you swim in the sea, you're going to drown. For example, if someone had a near drowning experience, or all water is bad, you know, things like that. So that would be overgeneralization. So now you would challenge that by thinking, for example, if you say, my boss never liked me. So then the question is, has my boss never liked me? Or is this how I feel now? Okay. Are all dogs dangerous? Or is this how I feel about that one dog that attacked me? Right? Is this statement true for everyone? And I know it sounds very simplistic, but you'd be very, very amazed at how much we overgeneralize. We do it all the time. We're just not aware that we are doing it. You know, if a certain person who looks a certain way, and I'm not even talking about, you know, color and race and all of that. If it, first, I had a friend in university, and I remember his name was Peter, and I remember Peter saying that whenever she sees a female with a beard, with like little, just a few hairs in his head, automatically that female is cruel. Because when he was younger, he had a teacher who had like just chin hairs, and that teacher was horrible, and that teacher used corporal punishment on them. And so he associates females with just a few hairs on their chin, not like a full-on beard, like few hairs. If he spots a few hairs on your chin and you're a female, in his books, you are a very cruel person. Because that was his experience. So that would be overgeneralization. It was only one female with a few hairs on their chin that was cruel to him, but all of a sudden, all females with a few hairs on their chins are cruel. Okay? Fortune telling. Being sure of how things will turn out or how you or another person will behave. I'm sure she's not going to greet me. I'm sure she's not going to do that, her part of the work assignment. I'm sure it's not going to go well. I'm sure I'm going to have a terrible time, right? That's fortune telling. And now, how you challenge that is you ask yourself, how sure are you things will turn out this way? How sure are you? And based on what or how many events are you making the statement? Okay. The next one is should statements. That's when you're being unrealistic on yourself and on others, or you're putting pressure on yourself and on others, and you're self-critical. My husband is originally from Cameroon, but they all, you know, all live in America. And he said one of the first things, culture shock, that he experienced when he came to South Africa is how much South Africans say should and must. And he found it very offensive. And my husband is French. So he found it so offensive and so rude. He was like, how rude are South Africans? You must, you should. It's part of our culture, isn't it, to say should and must. But we don't understand how much pressure those two words put on a person. We have no idea how saying to someone, you must or you should, how that actually pressurizes them. It's something that I am so super aware of. And remember, guys, depending on what we're saying, or rather, depending on how we are saying something, we elicit certain responses from people, right? So, for example, if you're saying you should do the dishes, that person is most likely going to be so defensive and so passive aggressive and not do the dishes if it's your teenager, for example, right? So we need to be very aware when we use those statements of must and should, even if we feel, you know, we need to say the words must and should, just be very aware of how much pressure it puts on the other person. Okay, so like I said, it's being unrealistic on yourself and on others, or putting pressure on yourself and on others. It's actually quite self-critical, right? I should be happy. For example, I literally at 4 p.m. just now, I saw a patient who is very, very depressed, very, very anxious, and she was talking about her life. And one of the things she said was, I feel so guilty because I should be happy. Can you see how self-critical that is and how much pressure that puts on her to be happy? She even ignores the fact that she's got depression. So it's at this stage, it's quite severe and it's virtually impossible to be happy. But yet she has that inappropriate guilt and she puts it on herself by saying, I should be happy, which makes her feel even more guiltier, which makes her feel even more depressed. And the more depressed she is, the more unhappy she is, and the more unhappy she is, the guiltier she feels for being unhappy. And so the cycle just continues and continues. And literally, I told her you can break that cycle of depression, unhappy, guilt, depression, unhappy, guilt by literally removing that should statement that you just made. I should be happy. According to whom? Okay. So I was replace the should with I would like to. Instead of saying I should be happy, you can say I would like to be happy. Isn't that more realistic and more attainable and less critical and just easier to carry? Emotional reasoning. Ooh, yeah, né? Your feelings are a reflection of reality. I feel guilty, I'm a horrible person. So just because I feel guilty, I am a horrible person. Really? I always tell people your feelings are feelings, they are not facts. They are just feelings. They are not facts. So see them as feelings and feel them for what they are, but don't give them more power than that. Okay? And how do you challenge that? Is this inappropriate guilt, especially in cases like a depression? They feel a lot of inappropriate guilt. For example, I should be happy. I feel guilty because I'm not happy and I should be happy. That's what I call inappropriate guilt. Okay. So is this inappropriate guilt, or have you done anything to be guilty about? For example, if you're saying that I feel guilty, or should you really be feeling guilty? Or is this inappropriate how you're feeling? Okay. And also, is this a feeling or is it a fact? And being able to identify between feelings and facts, because they are two very, very different things. Okay. Who's ever heard of black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking? We do it sometimes, don't we? Black or white thinking or all or nothing thinking. That's when there's absolutely no middle ground. It's either good or it's bad, and that's it, right? And the dysfunctional function, so all of these cognitive distortions have dysfunctional functions, right? They serve a purpose, no matter how dysfunctional that purpose is, right? So, for example, with black and white thinking, the dysfunctional function is that you remain the victim. And who doesn't want to feel sorry for themselves? I like feeling sorry for myself sometimes. Like my husband is in Cape Town now, working his butt off, but in my mind, he's in Cape Town living his best life. Meanwhile, he's not. He was stuck in the campus the other day for I don't know how many hours because of the strike, you know. But in my mind, he's in Cape Town living his best life. And here I am, poor me, two sick babies, a sick 4-year-old, a sick 9-month-old. I'm not sleeping. I was there in the emergency room from 2 in the morning up until 5:30 in the morning. And I just got home and I had a cup of coffee and I showered and I went straight to work and I had a full day of work. Poor me. Black or white thinking. Okay? I'm here having the most horrible time ever, and there he is living his best life, drinking mimosas on Table Mountain. Meanwhile, the poor guy is working his butt off at UCT. Okay? So the dysfunctional function of black and white thinking is that you are the victim. Guys, we love feeling sorry for ourselves. Let's be honest. We love feeling sorry for ourselves, right? And when we feel sorry for ourselves, when we remain the victim, then we don't have to do any work. If I'm the victim, why am I doing work? right? I don't have to do work. I'm the victim, right? And black and white thinking, it simplifies things. I will. So black and white thinking simplifies things, doesn't it? It's an opportunity for us to ignore how the complexities or the complex nuances of being a human being, you know? So in that black and white thinking, that all or nothing thinking, I ignore the gray because I don't want to deal with the gray because the gray is too much thinking. I don't have time to be dealing with the gray. So it's either black or it's white, and that's it. Okay. And this black and white thinking, it's often in extremes, right? And it's very common in, once again, depression, and it's very common in anxiety disorders. Okay. I think, did I talk about, I didn't talk about personalization. Okay, so that's when you blame yourself for things that are way out of your control, or you blame others for your negative feelings, and you don't take any responsibility for anything, right? It's because of so and so. I did this because you did this. I said this because have you guys ever been, oh my word, this term is just gone now. Have you ever been, not shut down, have you ever been, what's this catchy phrase that all of the Gen Zs use all the time? You are something, something me. My word, it's gone. Okay, it's fine. I'll think of it later. It's just the term is gone. Wow. Okay. So you don't take responsibility for your own feelings. It's always someone else. You made me feel, something I always tell my people, no one can make you feel anything. You choose what you want to feel when you want to feel it. I think I did a talk a few years ago. Wow, I think like 2018. Here on Rise, I did a talk on your guys' mom brain. I'm sorry. My children have really been sick and I haven't been sleeping much. I can't remember the term what I did a talk on, but um I spoke about, basically, how habits form, and I spoke about how the first few seconds of feeling an emotion is like a biological reaction, but anything after that is you choosing to remain in that emotion. So you cannot say 30 minutes later, you are making me feel angry. No, ma'am, sorry, it does not work like that. You are choosing to remain in anger because it's 30 minutes later, it's an hour later, you are choosing to remain in anger. But it's easy for me to say, you are making me feel angry, you are making me feel this way, because I don't have to take any responsibility. Okay. So questions that I need you to think about as you go forward is, which one or ones do you often use? Thank you, Mandy. Which one of these or ones do you often use? Because trust me, we all use quite a few of those, okay? In what ways are they helpful? Because remember I said each cognitive distortion has a dysfunctional function. It serves a purpose, right? So in what ways are they helpful? And what psychological pain do they protect you from? But also in what ways are they harmful? And how do they operate in your life, and when? And what can you do to challenge them? Okay. So that's all from me on cognitive distortions with 3 minutes to spare. I'm going to hand over back to you, Lori.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Sibs. That was absolutely amazing. And it's always so nice to just hear it like from someone experienced in the field. Because it's all good like going and reading up the theory and everything, but then when you explain it in more depth with examples, it's really helpful. I just wanted to open up the floor quickly to Nicolene and Mandy if you have any questions for Sipe. Yes, Tam, definitely. Sipe, we need to hear that every year, girl. Every year.
I think more than once a year, hey? I think a few times in a year, because man, we forget and we get caught up in the negative cycles again, right?
Yes. Mandy, Nicolene, any questions? Anything you want to share? Tam, can we all have coffee with you? Thanks. That wasn't a private message. No, I'm just joking. She needs coffee with you, Sips. She does once a week. You know, she always thrives when she has her coffee. Okay, it was so amazing to spend this evening with all of you. Mandy, I hope that you gained so much from this call this evening. And Nicolene, I saw you guys taking notes. And yeah, if you have any questions or you want to like reach out with any specific questions on the cognitive distortions, please feel free to pop me or Tam a message, and we can pass them on to Sipe as well if anything comes up, if that's okay, Sips. Awesome.
No.
Cool. Okay, ladies, we'll have the best week ahead and an amazing month of March. And just, yeah, don't forget to celebrate your victories, and try and actually remain mindful of identifying like what possible cognitive distortions you might be experiencing in your life and how you can like those questions that Sipe ended with. All right. Have the best evening. Thank you for your time, Sipe. Thank you, ladies, for showing up this evening. Have a beautiful evening. Lots of love. Bye.